If you have your Bibles, if you'll turn to Genesis chapter 37 this morning, and I do want to put up a very comforting picture for everybody. First thing, just to make you all feel at home and relaxed. That's my ultimate goal right there. God has been very, very good to our church. I don't know what the attendance is this morning, but we've got a full house today. It's good to see people, like Jack mentioned earlier, it's good to see people coming back to church, coming back out and just getting together. It's so good to see that. And God has been so good to us. But there's something happening within the hearts of God's people that's really exciting to me. I'm loving what I'm seeing from week to week. I get to talk with you not only at church on Sunday, but I talk to some of you throughout the week also, and it's just really exciting because church isn't happening just on Sunday around here. That's what's so exciting to me. It's not just happening on Sunday morning for a few hours in church. That's not when church is happening. It's happening throughout the week. Individuals are starting to show their commitment to Christ at work. They're starting to show their commitment to Christ at home and in their daily activities wherever they're going. It's good to see that. It's evident that we're beginning to realize that this Christianity thing is all about a relationship with Christ. That is truly what it is. And that doesn't only happen on Sunday morning. That happens all the time. And it's good to see that. It's good to hear the stories of how one life was connected to another life because somebody decided to step out of their norm. They stepped out of their comfort zone and reached out to somebody else. They invested their life into the life of somebody else and were able to influence them for the cause of Christ. It's not only happening on Sunday morning, it's happening all the time. And that is so exciting to see. God's up to something with the people of our church, and staying close to him is what we want to do because we want to be part of whatever he's doing in this church or through this church. We want to stay close to him. I'm seeing more and more people who are trying not to do things for Christ, but with Christ. That's exactly how it's supposed to be done. I'm not doing it for you anymore. I'm doing it with you. That's a totally different way to move forward with Christ. It's not that idea that I have to do these things to make God happy. I don't have to do these things to please you in some way. I get to do it with you. That's a friendship. That's knowing when you move forward into a tough time in life, he's going through that with you. That's a better thought than I can do this for him. I'm going to stay faithful in this rough time and I'm going to do it for him. Doing it with him is so much easier than doing it for him because the truth is we do wear out when we're trying to live a life of service instead of a life of relationship and friendship with Christ. Same things are getting accomplished, just one's getting accomplished with a lot of power in it. The other one, you can get exhausted by the acts of service. So keep going. That's what it's supposed to be. We don't do things for Christ, we do things with Christ. That's exactly what it's supposed to be. But as you keep going, I want to give you a heads up. People do fizzle out. And I don't want that to happen to you. So as I'm watching all these things happen, and as I'm listening to people talk to me throughout the week about how they were able to connect with another person's life, I was thinking this week, man, how do you just keep this going? This is exciting. I love to see what's going on. And it hit me, people do fizzle out. I have fizzled out before. But back then I was doing it all for Christ instead of with Christ. When you're doing it with him, there's a lesser chance of fizzling out. But it's still possible to do that. So in the book of Genesis, we have a man named Jacob. Let's just start right into this. We got a guy named Jacob, and God changes his name to Israel, and his descendants are the Israelites. Isn't that neat? I just put all that together for you. That's where it all came from. It's really easy. Jacob's got named Israel, his children are the Israelites, and there you go. Now that puzzle's been put all together. That was an easy one. Jacob has 12 sons, who the 12 tribes of Israel were named after. I'm going to list their names and tell you, I'm going to tell you all 12 of their names. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. But there is one that's not included in the 12 tribes of Israel. So let's go ahead and throw that on the screen. We have Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. Which one didn't make the cut? Joseph. He didn't make the cut. You look at all those names, you go, yep, those are tribes of Israel. And then you get down to Joseph, and you're like, yeah, he's not one. He's not a tribe of Israel. He would have been my number one pick for the job. If you think about those 12 sons, yeah, I'm going to make Joseph the top. I'm going to put him at the top of the list, but he doesn't even make the cut. He's not one of the tribes of Israel at all. See, God had a different plan in mind for Joseph than to be one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, I love what God does in Revelation, because when you get to Revelation, Joseph is one of the 12 tribes of Israel. And we'll talk about that another time. But his name is listed in the 12 tribes when you get to Revelation. And a couple of those other guys, Dan and Ephraim, which was Joseph's son, they're not in the list. But Joseph makes the cut. But his name's missing in this list, and I would have put him in that list. Based on his story, I would have said, yeah, Joseph, that should have been one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph should have made it, but he didn't. See, a lot of negative things happened with Joseph. God had a plan for Joseph's life. A lot of negative things happened in his life, but look at what his outlook was in the end. After all those negative things, look at Joseph's outlook on life. Genesis 50 and verse 20. But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Joseph's story had a powerful ending, but it had a very tragic beginning. You look at the beginning of Joseph's story, and you're like, that poor kid. And then it's not like that poor kid, but here's a glimmer of hope. No, we added more of that poor kid version on top of the first one. And it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And then his outcome in the end is, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. So everything's good. Everything's good. He's an impressive person. Satan tried to get in very early in the story of Joseph. Tries to get in on the bottom rung here. When we begin reading this story in Genesis chapter 37, everything seems to be fine, but it quickly turns around. Jacob has 4 wives. By the way, bad move. He has 4 wives. Nothing against the women, but bad move. Women, 4 husbands, that would also be a bad move. Jacob has 4 wives. He has children with all but one of those wives. Rachel, his first love, was not able to have children. That's the one he wanted. That's the original. He wanted to marry Rachel. He ended up getting Leah. Then the handmaids get involved, and now you've got 4 women. He's got children with 3 out of 4 of them. But the one that he loved, the one that he wanted from the beginning, she wasn't able to have children. Finally, after many years, Rachel gives birth to Joseph, and now Daddy has a favorite because it's the child of the one that he loved. He wanted Rachel all along. Now she's able to have this boy. Joseph's born, and Daddy now has a favorite child. Again, bad move. If you've got several children, you don't get a favorite one. That's just unhealthy. We joke with our kids. Our kids are like, am I your favorite now? Did you see what I did? Am I your favorite? You're leaning that way. And the other 2 are like, what? What are we doing? What are we talking about? Nobody's our favorite. We love you equally. Nobody's our favorite. But Jacob had a problem because he does have a favorite here. Look at verse 3 of Genesis chapter 37. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age. Also he made a tunic of many colors. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. The reason Joseph's brothers wanted nothing to do with him wasn't because of anything he did. That's interesting right there. What did you do wrong? Nothing. Then why do they hate you? I didn't do anything. They hate him. And it's not because of anything that he's done at all. Joseph was just the object of their hatred. That's all. He wasn't the reason for their hatred, but he was where everything's focused on. Our hatred is going to be placed on you. Are you the reason? No. But you are the destination, where we choose to hate you. The reason for their hatred and anger came from the father who they loved. If you think about that, that's just ironic. It came from the father they loved. Joseph was just a lucky contestant that won it all. We have hatred building up because of what Dad did. But you're the one we hate. We love him. It doesn't seem fair at all. I want everyone to see what's going on here. Joseph was just their little brother. That's his part in the story. He's just their little brother. He's done nothing that the other siblings wouldn't have done. He's just a kid. He's just being a kid. He has given them no reason to hate him at all. He's just as much of an imperfect person as they are. He's just a person in the story. That's all he's got going on right now. He's just a person in the story. All of these brothers love their father and would do anything for their father, including Joseph. They all love their dad. Jacob just got really excited when his wife Rachel was finally able to have kids. And when she was able to have a son, he ended up cherishing Joseph a lot more than he showed love towards the other boys. And that's unfortunate, but that's what happened. Ironically, love was the reason for the hatred. Just think about that for a second. Love is the reason for the hatred. Who came up with that plan? Why do you hate him? Because of love. Okay, perfect. It just makes all sense now. It's just exactly what we would have thought. No, who comes up with that plan? Now that the feelings of hatred exist, all good things are like salt in the wound. This is how everything good is seen now. It's just like salt in a wound. Everything is seen in a negative light. Because of the hatred that was produced because of the love, now everything that happens that's good is seen as bad. It's all seen in a negative light. God's going to do amazing things in the life of Joseph, and Joseph has now become old enough for God to reveal his work in his life. Joseph is apparently a young man who is chasing after God. You read the story and you can see Joseph's heart is to chase after God. So God speaks to him in a dream, revealing a little bit about the way he's going to deliver his family from a famine in the future. He's starting to reveal this plan to Joseph in a dream. Once he has the dream, he gets excited about what God's doing in his life, and he decides to share the news with his brothers. So far, so good, except for share with somebody else. Don't share with your brothers because they hate you because of the love thing. So this is the wrong audience, but he picks his brothers. He says, I want to share with you what God's doing in my life. Look at Genesis chapter 37 and verse 5. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And indeed your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Joseph literally just gave them a message he received from God, and they hate him more now that they hear the message. They hate him even more. Joseph's crimes are just kind of piling up here. So far, he's guilty of being loved by his father. That's pretty deep right there. You are guilty for being loved by dad. Now he's being convicted of a crime of sharing God's message. What a scoundrel. Just a dirty, rotten human being Joseph must have been. These are his crimes. Crime number 1, dad loves you. Crime number 2, you relayed a message from God. That's all he's got. That's all that's going on here. What's not being discussed in this passage is something that's definitely not going unnoticed. Everyone's being affected by the way the brothers feel towards Joseph. Everybody in the story is being affected by the way they perceive Joseph. Mom, dad, mom. That's just weird. The brothers, everybody, anybody in connection with that family would be affected by the way the brothers feel towards Joseph. The whole family dynamic would have changed because of these emotions. Just imagine 11 people in your family who hate one person in your family. A lot. It would change everything. The whole family dynamic goes out of whack because of that emotion. God knows what's happening here, so he reveals a move that he's going to play later on in the story, but he reveals this move to Joseph. Joseph has another dream. Look at Genesis 37 and verse 9. Then he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers and said, look, I have dreamed another dream. And this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars bowed down to me. So he told it to his father and his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you?" And his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind. There's a lot of different emotions flying around in those 3 verses right there. Lots of things going around. Joseph is excited again about what God might be doing in his life. So there's the excitement emotion. Joseph's excited. Now his brothers still hate him, so we lock that one in. They still hate him. Jacob rebukes him for that arrogant sounding dream. Oh, so we're all just supposed to bow down to you. So now there's that emotion too. Then the whole emotional roller coaster takes a really sharp turn here. The brothers were envious of him. And Jacob begins to contemplate the truth of it all. All that's happening in 3 verses there. There's clearly something happening in the life of Joseph, and everybody is taking notice. Now his brothers don't just hate him, they envy him. We hate that guy. Why can't we be like him? Oh, everything's just lining up perfectly in this story. They're envying the person that they hate. Why is he getting all the dreams? Why does he get the coat of many colors? Why do the dreams place him over us? This isn't right. This isn't fair. This is what the brothers are going through. Now, before we go any farther, we need to recognize that the problem in this story is not in the events, but in the lack of communication. That's where the problem lies here. Jacob should have communicated his love to all his sons. That's just the right answer. He should have let every son know how much he loved them, but he focused all on Joseph. That the lack of communication causes a wedge to be formed there. The sons should have communicated with Jacob about how they were feeling. That should have happened, but that didn't happen. That's not how the story unfolds. There came a day when the brothers were tending to the sheep in the city of Dothan, and Jacob sends Joseph out to find out how the brothers are doing, just to give a report to him. How are they doing? They've been out there a while. Could you please give me a report? I want to know about their well-being. And then this happens. Genesis 37 and verse 18. Now when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, "Look, this dreamer is coming. Come, therefore, let us now kill him and cast him into some pit, and we shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams." But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, "Let us not kill him." At least one brother steps up and says, "Okay, killing him. Maybe that's bad. Maybe we shouldn't kill him." Joseph, who's done nothing wrong, is now at risk of losing his life. Still hasn't done anything wrong. He's just the object of their hatred. But now he's at risk of losing his life. His brother Reuben steps up and convinces the others, let's not kill him. Let's just not kill him. So they take his coat of many colors away from him, and then they throw him in a pit. Not real nice, but at least it's better than death. That's when his brother Judah says something they all seem to have forgotten. Another brother steps up and says the one thing they seem to have forgotten this whole time. Look at verse 26. So Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh." And his brothers listened. Their anger had grown to the point where they were willing to kill their own flesh and blood. That's how bad this has gotten. And it's just the first chapter of Joseph's story. This is chapter 37. It goes all the way to chapter 50. This is just chapter 1. Their focus had gotten so wrapped up in their emotions that they neglected to recognize the fact that Joseph was one of their loved ones. This is our family. This is our flesh and blood. He became the outlet for their hurt. Yeah, they're hurting because of what Dad neglected to do. He neglected to show them love also. But now their hurt's been built up so much, and they hate Joseph for it. They don't hate Dad. They really still love Dad. But they hate Joseph because Dad loves Joseph. Now that hurt has gotten to the point where they're willing to take his life. And Judah says he is our flesh and blood. We can't forget about that. He is our flesh and blood. This could have been a team of people working together for the glory of God. I would have loved to read that version of the story. They all came together as one family, 12 brothers and their father and their mothers, and they lived and glorified God. I would have loved to read that version, but we don't have that version. Instead, they became a group of people who were taken down by an invisible ambush. Something's going on in the family. As many of you are striving to grow in Christ, I am getting more and more excited to see what God's going to do. I'm loving it. I'm loving not being the one that I hear talking about spiritual things all the time, but I hear other people talking about their relationship with Christ and how much they want to grow and how excited you are about this. I'm loving this. But we would be foolish to think for even 1 second that Satan is going to go ahead and sit this one out. He is not going to sit this one out. They're growing in their relationship with Christ. Yeah, all right, fine, I quit. He's not going to take that avenue. He's not going down that way. He's not going to sit this out. God was trying to set up a powerful display of grace and provision while Satan was trying to tear down Joseph's family, trying to tear it apart right at the beginning. Now, I want everybody to join with me here in an illustration. It's going to be so much fun. Imagine with me that there's a mom that opens up a cabinet in the kitchen and she finds flour spilled everywhere. I know this is just life in the homes of all of us. You know, every once in a while, oh great, there's an unexplained mess. She opens up the cabinet and finds flour everywhere. So she asks everyone who did it. And there's this, hopefully you have this same person in your household that I have in my household. This guy named Nobody comes in and does stuff in our house. It's like, who did this? Nobody did it. Where is he? I'm really starting not to like this guy. But we ask, this mom in this illustration, she asks everyone and everybody denies that it was them. Then one kid boldly steps up and says it was most likely the youngest one because she never puts anything away properly anyway. I'm guessing it was her. Now the youngest one blows up and says, oh no, it was definitely him. He's blaming me because he's trying to shift the focus off of himself. It was definitely him that spilled the flour. He made the mess. Now the mom says, I'm going to place my money on the clumsy kid. I'm going to place my money on that kid right there because they have a clumsy tendency about them. Then dad pipes in and goes, it wasn't them. If it was them, they would have confessed. It's not them. Now everybody's fighting back and forth. The youngest one's at the other one. They're all fighting back and forth. The mom and dad are in a disagreement. While all the fighting's taking place, the rat who ate the hole in the bag of the flour is sitting back and listening to everything. Everybody's going at each other, but it wasn't anybody's fault. Nobody was the cause of the problem. It was some rat that ate the hole in the bag of flour. That's all that happened there, and everybody's going at each other. This is how Satan often extinguishes somebody who's on fire for God. This is how he does it, and he's good at it. He's so good at it. If he can cause division to happen from within, then he never has to attack from without. If you can just argue amongst yourself for a minute, I'll sit back and watch. I will gladly just listen to all of it go down. But if you're not going to let division happen from within, then I'm going to attack from without. But let's go ahead and try within first. And he's very, very good at this. There are two very important things we must keep in mind if we're going to continue reflecting Christ. We've got to grab both of these things. They are so important. If we're going to continue reflecting Christ, if we're going to live in his image and let the world see his light through our light, we've got to remember these two things. Ephesians 6 and verse 12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. We are never supposed to be the object of our anger. It's not people. It's not people. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood. People are never supposed to be the object of our anger. They're supposed to be the goal we're trying to reach for Christ. Think about that for just a second. Yeah, but they're already saved. Doesn't matter. Grow deeper. We're always trying to reflect Jesus Christ. People aren't the enemy. We've got to lock that in. People are not the enemy. Yeah, but that one guy, he might be right. No, not even him. Not even that guy. People are not the enemy. Satan tried to get in on the ground level of Joseph's story. Chapter 37, right at the beginning. He tries to get in right at the beginning of the story. But Joseph's faithfulness turned every attack into a tool that God could use. Every single attack. Joseph remained faithful through all of it. Eventually, he was able to provide for his family during a 7-year famine. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. And God still used him to save them after a 22-year separation. Just think about that. They sold their little brother into slavery, and 22 years later, Joseph says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Let me take care of you. Wow, where did that guy come from? That's impressive. Joseph learned a very valuable lesson. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood. It's Satan that's behind the scene. It's Satan that's the problem. It's not people. It is not people. You might think of somebody right now that you're like, yeah, we don't play well together. God still loves that person, right? Then they're not the enemy. They're not the enemy. We've got to reach out. We've got to love people. If Satan can get involved in the way that you view other people, all he has to do is bite a hole in the bag of flour and watch you go at each other. That's all he has to do. Let them fight each other. Let them grow to resent each other. Let that relationship right there, let's put a wedge right there and watch them separate from each other. Let's see families broken apart. Let's see friendships ended. Let's see them focus so much on the hurt that somebody else did to them that they can't be used for Christ. If I can get it to happen from within, then I can just sit back and watch the whole thing go down. I don't have to get involved from without, because they'll ruin each other. He's the rat behind everything. And I mean that with all due respect. He is the rat behind it all. What he is doing is causing division. That's all Satan wants to do. Just cause division and let it crumble from within. He tried to do this in Joseph's family, but Joseph was determined to do the other thing that we must keep in mind if we're going to continue to reflect Jesus Christ. Joseph was determined to do this. Look at John chapter 13 and verse 34. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this, all will know that you're my disciples, if you have love for one another. This is the key to it all. This is everything right here. We're not commanded to love one another as they deserve to be loved. He didn't say that. If he said that, that would change everything for us. There would be no love anywhere. None of us really deserve it. He didn't say, love one another as they deserve to be loved. He didn't say that. We're also not even told to love each other as we would want to be loved. That's not what he said there. He says we're supposed to love one another as we are loved by Christ. Love them the same way I loved you. Yeah, but you really, really love me. Got it. Right there. But they're my enemies. I loved you when you were my enemy. When you were still sinners, Christ died for you. That's how I want you to love other people. Satan often gets us to react to situations or define someone else by their situation. He's really good at that. When we begin to look down on others because of what we perceive as truth, when it may not be the truth at all. We might have assumed something we shouldn't have assumed. they react this way, they do this, and I just think that's the kind of person they are. What about the hurt that you don't know about that they're experiencing? What about that? We don't know all the details, but a lot of times we assume that people are doing things just because of this, that, or the other thing, when that might not be the truth at all. We lash out at people because of the trials or emotions we're experiencing when it was never their fault in the first place. We know how it goes. When you're sick, you don't treat everybody like they're royalty. It doesn't happen. You can confess it, like, yeah, I know. Yeah, you don't. When we're feeling lousy, we have a tendency to treat people lousy. Not because they did anything wrong, but because of how we're feeling. It happens with emotions. It happens with trials in life too. When we're feeling a burden on us, we don't naturally treat people with love. And the truth is, it's not their fault in the first place. You see, a rat ate a hole in the bag of flour, and we're just trying to comprehend what happened with our own understanding. That's all that's going on there. Satan got involved somewhere, and now we're trying to use our own understanding to figure out what does all of this mean. But he's the one behind the scenes that just started the problem and let it escalate. But it's our choice whether we're going to allow it to escalate. That's still our responsibility. But while we're trying to understand everything, that rat is just sitting back and watching us go at it. I don't really think it's fair that he gets to be a spectator to that. I think we should call the game on account of rain. Just, it's over. We're done. We're done. We're not going to fight anymore about this. We're going to realize there's a rat somewhere, and we're just going to end this now. Joseph's brothers didn't know how to deal with their feelings. They didn't know what to do with that. So they took it out on the only one that they could connect everything to, when it was never flesh and blood responsible for the problem at all. That was never the problem. Flesh and blood sometimes gets pulled in, but they are not the enemy. We've got to remember that. It's not people. That's not our enemy. Not even that one guy. Not our enemy. They sometimes get involved in the situation, but they're not the cause. They're not the problem. Sin, Satan, that's the problem. That's the rat behind it all. It's not the people. That person is somebody that Jesus Christ died for and loves and wants to use you to reach. They're not the enemy. Instead of reacting as most people would, Joseph decided to lean on God through every single trial. Remarkable young man. He was 17 when his story started in the Bible. 17 years old. He's a remarkable person. He chose to walk in love even when others behaved in an unlovable way. I love you guys. You know we're going to kill you, right? I love you anyway. How? Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. He understood that there was a rat somewhere behind the scenes. It's not flesh and blood. It's not flesh and blood. There's something else going on here. And God's bigger than whatever that is. And I'm going to love you in spite of your actions. I'm going to love you in spite of everything that's going on in my life. I'm going to love you in spite of every emotion that's building up right now, because you're not the enemy. It's not flesh and blood. Joseph set the example that God asks every single one of us to set. Look at Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 2. And walk in love as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. God is doing incredible things in the hearts of the people of this church. I love everything I'm seeing. Your heart is where something's changing. And it doesn't mean we were bad before and we're getting better now. It just means there's life happening. We're seeing it all around. There's life that's happening. People are saying we've got to reach them. We've got to be what God created us to be so we can reach people for Christ. I want to be involved. I want to do something. I've seen it everywhere. I love the conversations I've been involved with. I love those. I love those moments when I see God's people reaching out to help each other. And this church is full of that. You reach out to help each other. Somebody puts on Facebook, hey, does anybody know Somebody that can do this kind of stuff, and the other person says, I can. What time can I come over? Well, what happened there? Shouldn't you just drop the name of the plumber or the electrician or whatever? No, they're just there. They're just there. A friend to help another friend. That happens all the time around here. I love the fact that I hear more and more talk about reaching other people for Jesus Christ. I couldn't be happier. I love what I'm seeing. God is actively involved in this church. But beware, I smell a rat. There's no way he's going to sit back and just watch. He's going to get involved. So I encourage every one of you to call in the exterminator. You understand you don't have the power. Satan is powerful. Satan is smart. He's highly intelligent. He's so subtle. And no, we don't always see what he's up to. Well, let's just be real. Let's just be humble about this. Yeah, he's good. He's good. He's been watching you since the day you were born, and he knows how you work. He knows what the temptations are. He knows where he can make you stumble. He's going to do everything he can to take you down. And we've got to understand that he is really smart. So pick up that spiritual phone called prayer and say, I need an exterminator. There's a rat somewhere around here. I know he's here. What are the signs? People are in love with Christ. People are on fire to reach the world for Christ. People are working on their own lives and trying to grow in Jesus Christ. Those are all the signs that he's going to be somewhere close, because he's not going to want that to happen. Satan wants in on your story right now. Right now. If he can get in at this very moment, he wants to do that. He wants in right now. When Israel was about to enter into the promised land, Moses commanded the priests to do something before the people went into each and every battle. You should read this passage. God implemented this in their story. Before you go into battle each time, the priest is supposed to do something. He was commanded to encourage them by recalling their minds to the exterminator. Before you go into battle, I want you to remember there's an exterminator, because we're about to run into a rat somewhere. So let's call the exterminator before we go in. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 20 and verse 3. And he shall say to them, Hear, O Israel, today you are on the verge of battle with your enemies. Do not let your heart faint. Do not be afraid, and do not tremble or be terrified because of them. For the Lord your God is he who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to save you. Before you go in, understand you need to call the exterminator. We're about to go in. You are about to come face to face with your enemies. And it's not flesh and blood. That is not the enemy. There's a rat. There's a rat in there, and he's bigger than all of us, so call in the exterminator. God knows exactly where that rat is. He knows exactly what he's up to, and he knows how to help you with the problem. He's really, really good at that. We don't do this Christianity thing alone. He does it with us. Remember, it's a relationship, not a religion. He does it with you. He wants to do it with you. Just as the priests were supposed to encourage the people before they faced their enemies, we're supposed to encourage and strengthen each other too. That's our job too. Look at Hebrews chapter 3 and verse 13. But exhort one another daily, while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sin. Satan is going to attack. He wants to be part of it. And maybe he already has. Maybe he has already struck. Maybe he's gotten you to define yourself by something you are not. Maybe he did that. Because of something that you've done in your past, now you define yourself by that thing. Maybe he got in there and got you to define yourself in a way that God does not define you. Maybe he got in there. Maybe he's caused a wedge to be formed against you and somebody else. Remember, if he can cause division to happen from within, he never needs to attack from without. If he can get it between you and somebody else, or he can cause the division within your own heart, then he doesn't really need to attack from without. Guard your heart. We're the family of God. We're the house of God. There's a rat somewhere. Just heads up. We'll guard your heart, because he does not want you to move forward. He wants you to sit this one out. There's plenty of room for God in every single relationship. There's no room for Satan. There's no room for him. Call in the exterminator. Let's get involved, and let's call him in right now. Every day we follow Christ. Every person we love as he loved us. That's the goal. Every situation we see what God can do through that situation to reach out to that other person. That's where our heart's supposed to be. That's how we're supposed to lock all of this in. And if we do this, it won't be long before the rat begins to starve and find food elsewhere. Isn't that good news? You mean we can get the rat to run away? Yes, we can. Well, I thought he was involved all the time. Yeah, he tries to be, but can you get him to flee? Can you get him to run? Yes, we can. James chapter 4 and verse 7. Therefore, submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Satan hates it when the child of God lives a life of resistance to him and submission to God. He hates that. I'm trying to take you down. No, I don't have time for that. There's people who need Christ. Yeah, but think of who you are. I'm a child of God. No, you're a dirty, rotten sinner because of that thing you did. No, I was saved from that. I'm a child of God. You need to go. You need to go. I can't listen to all of that because I'm focused on this. I'm focused on Jesus Christ. I'm going to submit to God, and I'm going to resist you. Resisting the devil doesn't mean you just say no to him. He tempts you to do something, you say no. He'll be back to tempt you again. He doesn't flee from you just because you said no. This is a lifestyle of resistance. This is understanding that you are a child of God, not a dirty, rotten sinner. I've been saved from this. I've been taken from the category of sinner, and God has placed me into the category of saint. So now I need to live like what I am. I can't live like what I was saved from. I can't do that anymore. Yeah, but you're no good. God says I'm accepted. Yeah, but you can't. Yeah, he can. You're not loved. Have you met him? He adores me. He adores me. Yeah, but you need to sit this one out. I'm too pumped up to sit down. You take this one out. I'm going to move forward. There's a rat. There's a rat trying to take you down. Just heads up. Heads up. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep moving forward for Christ. God's doing so much in the lives of his people in this church. God is doing so much. Call in the exterminator. Call him in. Hey, God, I know there's a rat somewhere. I don't know where he's at. I don't know specifically what it is to take him down, but I'm going to stay close to you. Because Satan doesn't get to hang out with God. So if you're hanging out with God, he's got to sit this one out. Call in the exterminator. Call him in. Grow. Continue to do what you're doing. Let Christ live his life through your life. But understand, somewhere, maybe it's within your heart, maybe it's in a relationship you have with somebody else, maybe it's the way you're defining yourself, when Christ never defined you that way. But you have found a way to define yourself in a different way. There's a rat somewhere. And he's trying to make it so you destroy yourself from within, so he doesn't have to attack you from without. Call in the exterminator. Call in the exterminator and keep striving for Christ. You were made to thrive, not to sit this one out.